Hi everyone, Joe here. Welcome to yet another episode of the Test-Driven Development Screencast. As usual, we are gonna continue working where we left off in the previous one, which means we are gonna work on the timeline UI as promised in the previous episode. So without much talking, let's just jump into where we left off straight in the code. So we finished in terms of the timeline, the backend error and the offline. Now it's time to do the UI. In fact, if I open the TimelineViewModel and take a look here, so what we are missing here is also the loading states and switching the thread here as well. But I feel like that's gonna be something that we are gonna work later on, because I want to do this mixture, right? So a little bit on the UI, a little bit on the business logic. I don't want to spend like too much time on one part of the application, so it's not gonna be that boring, let's say. So as we can see here, in order to call the timeline, we need a user ID, which means if I go to the timeline, which is the screen, here we need to get the user ID from the user that has signed up in order to continue working further on. So basically here we need the ID of the signed up user. So that's something that we can work on. We can start from there. So let's here write what's missing, just not to forget. So yeah, the loading stage, the thread switching. So yeah, just to keep track of the things, right? So basically we will need to inject this timeline view model here, and also we will need the user ID. So as I can imagine, now this episode is gonna be a little bit more of a wiring between the things. So let's see how that's gonna go. First of all, let's rename this timeline into TimelineScreen, because with the sign up, we have the sign up screen of the composable sign up screen. And I think it would be nice if we name all the composables that are representing a screen with the same suffix, let's say. So first, let's name this to a screen. And I would like to also change the file name. Right, so let's also make sure the microtests are still working. Basically, the microtests shouldn't be touched with this change, but just in case they are gonna run fast, I just want to check. Nothing should be worrisome. And also, which is more important, I would like to run the UI tests and see where we are. Maybe it would have been nice also to run the application like a standalone, not the tests, then see. But basically, yeah, it opens the timeline and it seems it works as we expect it to work. Right, so we have all the tests running fine so far. I won't see a reason why they wouldn't. Now let's check this in and see. So basically we've renamed the timeline into TimelineScreen, and of course, so improve naming. Good. Now if I take a look at let's basically maybe first start with a test. That's gonna be a good idea. So let's write a UI test. Okay, so here, as we can see, we have a package for the sign up. Let's create a package for the timeline. And similarly here, we are gonna create a timeline screen test. So that's gonna be a class, And I think we don't need the example instrumented test. Let's just get rid of that one. So here, let's create a test. And initially, let's imagine that I'm gonna have a user like just after sign up, so the user wouldn't have any posts yet. So it should be that the timeline is gonna be empty for that user. So basically, shows empty timeline message, something like that. So what I would like to do is launch timeline for. Now here, I think I have to pass a. So basically, to open the timeline, I would need to. I'm now thinking about more like sort of as a journey, like basically create a new user, and it's gonna open the timeline. And in order to create a new user, we need a username and password. So something like, I don't know, username, password. And I think we need also to pass the rule in order to be able to, because this launch timeline 4 is gonna be a robot, and then we'll need to pass the rule. And then we are gonna verify that we're gonna verify that the empty verify empty timeline message is shown, is displayed, I don't know. And then here I don't have any action, I just launch the timeline for the user password and the rule. Nothing happens here, I don't have any action, and I just directly go into the verification. I'm thinking that maybe now I should just launch the sign up here and then do the typing here as we've done in the previous test, but I think let's see how this is gonna go first. Now let's define what are these. So the username is gonna be, it's not a username, rather an email. The email is gonna be, let's say, lucy@friends.com. Then the password is going to be pass, I don't know, something like that. And then what's the rule? Let's create property for the rule, and it's gonna be get a rule, and the rule is gonna be, let's maybe borrow the same from here. And instead of sign up, this is gonna be timeline test rule. Right. And now let's create not create, but timeline test rule. And now let's create this function here, which is gonna be the email, a password, and a rule. And also, because we need this lambda here, let's actually make sure that this is visible. It's gonna take all of these and a block, and the block is gonna be timeline robot, and it's gonna also return the timeline robot, and that's gonna be a class that will live here. and this should return timeline robot, apply the block. Cool. Now let's import this and this, and basically, because this is way too long, what we can do is we can make a type alias for that one. So it's gonna be, let's say, main activity rule. And I think that's fine, but I should have actually create maybe a file right away for the robot, something like timeline robot, and it's gonna be a file. Let's see now if I can move easily this one. So no, I could not, but I can maybe do this. And then let's see. Okay, it has to be public, of course. Great. Now let's do the verify, which is going to be a member function. It's gonna take a block as well, and here the verification is gonna be in another class. I want to have this separation between the timeline robot, which is sort of the interactions robot, and another class that will do the verification only. So I just like that separation. But it's not a problem if you like decide to have different DSL or like write the assertions straight in the test without robots. It doesn't really matter. It's just matter of preference, I think. So here I'm gonna have timeline verification robot, and let's also return it. And create this class. Oops. Yeah. And now return timeline verification robot. And also apply the block. So we can work with the DSL. Now the thing is that in order to do these interactions and the verifications, in order to be able to access the UI sort of components, we need access to this rule. So that's why we passed it initially here. So let's actually pass it first. Timeline test rule. And here, let's see if I can do that automatically. So yeah, I can just name this rule. And I need it as a val because I need to be able to access it. Little formatting, and here pass the rule as well. Add parameter to the constructor, also rule, and here also private val rule, and yeah, that's fine. And now what we can do, if we go back to the test, now the verify is there, and what's missing is the empty timeline message is displayed. So let's create this member function in the verification robot. And what we need is basically no like empty timeline message is the rule activity get string or string empty timeline message. Let's import. Of course it does not exist yet. Let's create it. No posts, well, something like there are no posts available yet. Something like this. And we would do the rule on node with text empty timeline message assert is displayed. Something like that. And now what we need as well is to perform the sign up, because right now if I run the test it will just end. Let's actually try. So if I run this particular test, let's open the emulator and see what happens. I think it's gonna just stop at a sign up. It will never go anywhere further than that. And basically that's why I was thinking maybe, yeah, that's why I was thinking that maybe it would have been nice to do this action here, or like I struggle to see what's gonna be clearer, whether like launch timeline for email password or launch sign up and then here create user and then pass the email or password. So I don't know what's gonna read better. I would leave it for now as is, and would be nice if I can get some suggestions from you. So let's see, what do you think actually? And here what I'll do for now is I'll launch sign up screen and I'll pass the same rule, and I'll do type email, the email, type password, the password, and submit. That's gonna open the timeline, and then it will do the it will see if the test gonna pass. Let's see what happens. So we saw the timeline, but let's see if it failed for the right reason. So it says like expected exactly one node, but could not find any node that satisfies text. There are no posts available yet. Good, so that's what we wanted. So that's our test, and we have created the first robot for the timeline. I mean the initial structure, let's say, which looks pretty okay to me. And the test is like, most probably we'll do some refactoring later, as we will continue writing tests here, but for now I think initially it looks fine. So let's maybe, and in fact this type alias I think can go also in the robot itself. Let's see. It's a little bit long, but yeah, because it's in the same package it doesn't really matter. But I think I like the a little bit cleaner the test here, because the robot is something that is less relevant in the test. Like when you first open the code, you go to the tests and you see like the test, not the robots. So yeah, now let's check this in first. So what we are gonna say is, let's first commit only this one, removed obsolete test, and then here failing UI test for showing the empty timeline. Now you may say, okay, why did I commit a failing test? Why this is part of the commits? I just want to preserve this sort of where I am right now, and so if I do some mistake, it will be easier to revert. So it's sort of as a standing point for me at this moment. But like once I have something else working, I can actually amend that one. So let's see. So this is okay. Now let's jump into the... Oops, that's what I wanted, in the timeline screen. And here what we needed is to say well, basically I need to do, let's say, a column where the timeline is gonna be, and also a text that's gonna have a string resource, empty timeline message. Now let's see if the test gonna pass. I think it will pass. Yes. So let's actually amend, as I said before. Now let's do the wiring. Basically, when what we need also to do is to pass here in the timeline screen the user ID. So here we need the user ID from the signed up user, and also we need to inject the view model so that we can call on the view model the to actually to fetch the timeline. So we can do something like timeline view model, something like this, and then here we could do timeline view model timeline for user ID. So that's what I wanted to do basically. And then we can observe a state, and then we can see if, like, but that's gonna be first a little bit later. So basically, based on the state, on the actual results that are coming back, we can display the message, this one, or not displayed. But the test will remain passing. So now, what I've done here is cool, but this is not gonna work in the main activity, because we need to complete here some of the wiring. So basically, here we need to first inject the view model. And the problem now is that this timeline view model still does not derive from a view model. So let's do that first. And now that works. And now here we have to pass in the timeline screen, we need to pass the view model, timeline view model, but also here we have to pass the user ID. So is it timeline view model? Yeah, I think because it's the same name here, it wouldn't make sense to use the named arguments. But here we need a user ID. So how do we get the user ID? So basically, here we have a backstack entry. I think it is named. And here, what we can do, we can say we can load it from the backstack entry. So backstack entry arguments get string, let's say user ID, or oops, it's gonna fall back to empty, something like this. And now that's for the timeline. But we have to say to this composable here that has a root timeline. This is a root, and we also need to say that it needs also some arguments. So the arguments are gonna be a list of nav argument, and then here we are gonna just say the same user ID, and we don't need anything specific because by default it is a string. If it was not string, here in the builder we could say what's the type and so on, but because it defaults to string, everything's fine. So that's now that the timeline composable. So the route is the same, the timeline as it used to be, but now because we need this navigation argument, which is user ID, we have to also make it as part of the route. So for example, we need to do something like this. So the route is timeline/user ID, and we have this user ID as nav argument, and then when we are opening the timeline screen, we take the user ID that is passed as an argument, and we pass the timeline view model as well. So that's about it. And now here, what we need to do is, in order to because we are navigating towards the timeline after a successful sign up, as we can see here. Here in the navigation we have to pass well, here I think we can take the user ID, signed up user ID, and pass it here. Say timeline / signed up user ID. But of course, the sign up screen right now, the callback that we're having, is not returning. As we take a look, if we take a look here on signed up, it is not returning string, so we can change that. We can say, okay, from now on it's gonna return string, and here we should have everything compiling, and that's better. I think here we are pretty much complete. Of course, this does deserve a little bit of a cleanup. I don't particularly like too much these things, so maybe I can wrap some of these things in in classes or that kind of things, like routes or something like that. But that's something that I'll figure out a little bit later. And for now, I think it's fine. Now I think here I have to on signed up, I need to get the sign up state user ID. I have to pass there. Now this is not compiling because the problem is that this thing here is coming from live data. So it says that meanwhile it might change. I don't know why. This is sort of part of the compiler thingy. Like if I have if I do have the sign up, I know that that's the state. So I don't, like why you are asking me to cast? I'm not getting it. But anyway, and this is a val, but because it comes from the view model's live data, most probably that's the thing. Anyway, however, now I think this is how it's gonna work. And now I think let's run a test and make sure that it's still there and all this wiring is in place. Okay, it failed, and let's see why. It says no bean definition found. So basically, this view model that we have created, that we are trying to inject here, is not defined in the application module. So let's open the application module here, and let's create a view model. And here we need the timeline view model, and it takes a timeline repository, which is going to be get. So here we need to say timeline repository, and it takes user catalog, which is going to be get, and it takes post catalog, which is also going to be get, and the post catalog is not yet defined, so let's define it. And for now we can just use again the in memory post catalog. I think we are not having here default, so let's default it to an empty list. That should be fine. And now the test, if we take a look at the test, everything should be still fine. And indeed, the test is working. So now we have the wiring fine. And one thing that I want to check as well here is this. I want to run the application, and take a look at something specifically, because we particularly with the navigation. So here, if I sign up, so let's say team@friends.com, and the password will be something like this. And if I sign up, the timeline is being opened, but if I go back, it keeps staying on the timeline. So that's a problem. And I want to actually, once I'm signed up, I have to be able to close the application when I click back, right? So that's gonna be something that I want to fix as well. So let's maybe first check this in, what we've done so far. So timeline screen, setup and wiring, let's say, and in the main activity here, yeah, so this is the navigation. So we are navigating from here, and here we can say that we want to pop up to the sign up, but we also want to close the sign up, like don't stay at the sign up. So we will say inclusive equals true. So it will pop back to the sign up, but also close the sign up too. And now if I run, and try this out, and now if I tap on back, it should close the app. So indeed it does close the app. So I don't know, it's I don't know if I want to cover this with a test, because I do have something here that is, remember, the signed up user, and basically this is sort of part of it's gonna be part of that test. But that's gonna be when we are gonna be working on the remembering the sign up user. So basically, once you create an account, if you close the app, when you go back, it should keep the previously signed up user there. So I think it's gonna be part of that thingy. So for now, I think I'm not gonna cover this with a test, but the functionality will stay because yeah, I want to be able to close the application. Previously I was not able to close the app. So let's check this in too. Cool. And I think now we are ready to start working on the timeline screen, because all the wiring is there, and we don't have much to do in that regard. So basically we can continue with some regular UI here, but I think since now we are running already around 35 minutes, something like that, I think it's time to wrap up this episode, and we're gonna continue basically with the actual timeline UI in the next one. So thank you so much for the time and the attention. I'm gonna catch you in the next episode. Cheers.